Serenity Valley Stories invites you into the shadows. Like and subscribe for more tales that will haunt your nights. And now our feature presentation, The Fortune in the Walls. I remember the first time I heard about the old Ferris house. It was one of those stories that got passed around in low whispers in the back of the classroom, during lunch breaks, and under the bleachers at football games. People said there was money hidden there, left behind by the old man who had lived alone for years before disappearing without a trace. The cops had searched the house after he vanished, but they never found anything. Some said he'd gone senile and forgotten where he hid it. Others thought he never left the house at all. I didn't believe any of it at first. But then again, I was never one to pass up a challenge, especially when it involved a payday. So when Mike and the others started talking about breaking into the Ferris house to find the stash, I shrugged and said, why not? That's how I found myself standing on the cracked sidewalk in front of the abandoned house, staring up at its weather-beaten exterior. The place was a wreck, windows shattered, the paint long since peeled away, leaving only gray, rotting wood. The front yard was overgrown with weeds, and the gate hung off its hinges. Mike stood next to me, tossing a flashlight in his hand, the beam flickering as he tested it. "You ready, Ethan?" he asked with a grin, always the fearless leader of our little group. "Yeah, let's get this over with," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I wasn't scared. Not really. It was just an old house. Kelly and Sarah stood a few feet back, exchanging nervous glances. Kelly was biting her lip, shifting her weight from foot to foot like she was ready to bolt any second. Sarah, on the other hand, looked more curious than afraid. "I don't like this," Kelly muttered. "It feels wrong." Sarah rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on. It's just an old man's house. We'll be in and out in an hour, tops." Mike pushed open the rusty gate with a loud creak, and we followed him up the crumbling path to the front door. He turned the knob, it was unlocked, of course, and pushed it open, the door groaning in protest. Inside, the house was even worse. The air was thick with dust, and the floorboards creaked under our weight. Faint beams of moonlight filtered in through the broken windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and the walls were lined with peeling wallpaper. It felt like a place forgotten by time. "We should split up," Mike said, his voice echoing slightly in the empty space. "We'll cover more ground that way." I wasn't thrilled about the idea, but we'd already come this far. Kelly stayed close to me, clearly not wanting to be left alone, while Mike and Sarah headed off toward the back of the house. We started in the living room, checking under furniture, behind old paintings, and inside a rusted-out fireplace. Nothing. The only sound was the creaking of the house as it settled around us, the occasional gust of wind rattling the broken windows. "What if there's nothing here?" Kelly whispered. "There's gotta be something," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "No way that old man just vanished without a trace. He probably hid the money somewhere nobody thought to look." We moved into the kitchen next. The room was a mess, cabinets hanging open, dust-covered dishes still sitting in the sink. It didn't look like anyone had touched this place in years. I pulled open a drawer, half expecting to find some old, crumbling papers or rusted cutlery, but instead, there was a small tin box. My heart skipped a beat. "Hey, I think I found something," I said, holding it up. Kelly leaned in, eyes wide with anticipation. "Open it." I flipped the latch and lifted the lid. Inside, there were a few faded photographs, old and yellowed with age. They showed a man, presumably Mr. Ferris, standing in front of the house, his expression stern. In one photo, he was with a woman, maybe his wife, though I didn't know for sure. They both looked tired, worn down by time. "Ugh, that's it," Kelly said, disappointed. "No money, no jewels, just pictures." I tossed the box aside and continued searching the kitchen, frustration starting to creep in. But then, from the back of the house, I heard it, a noise, soft but unmistakable. Footsteps. I froze, listening. Kelly must have heard it too, because she grabbed my arm. "Did you hear that?" I nodded, my throat tight. Maybe it's Mike or Sarah. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't them. The sound was too slow, too deliberate. Whoever, or whatever, was back there wasn't in a hurry. "We should go," Kelly whispered, her voice trembling. "Let's just find Mike and Sarah first," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We headed toward the back of the house, the sound of footsteps growing louder with each step we took. As we reached the hallway that led to the bedrooms, the air grew colder. I didn't like it. The house had been stuffy and hot when we first walked in, but now the chill seeped through my jacket, making my skin prickle. "Mike?" I called out, my voice too loud in the eerie silence. "Sarah?" No answer. Kelly grabbed my arm again, her fingers digging into my skin. "We need to leave. Now." Just as I was about to agree, I saw something move at the end of the hallway, a figure, tall and gaunt, barely visible in the shadows. It was a man, his clothes tattered, his face obscured. He stood there, still as stone, watching us. Who are you?" I stammered, taking a step back. The figure didn't respond. It just stood there, unmoving, its presence oppressive. Then, slowly, it began to walk toward us. Kelly let out a strangled cry and bolted back toward the front door, her footsteps echoing through the house. I wanted to follow her, but my legs wouldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, my heart pounding in my chest as the figure drew closer. Finally, I managed to tear my eyes away and ran after Kelly, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The figure didn't chase me, but I could still feel it, its presence lingering in the air. I caught up with Kelly in the living room, her face pale, her hands shaking. "What was that?" she whispered. "I don't know," I said, trying to catch my breath. "But we need to find Mike and Sarah and get out of here." Just as I said that, we heard a scream, a high, piercing sound that sent a jolt of terror through me. It was Sarah. Without thinking, we ran toward the back of the house, the floorboards groaning beneath our feet. The door to one of the bedrooms was slightly ajar, and I pushed it open, my stomach twisting with dread. Sarah was lying on the floor, her body limp, her face pale. Mike was kneeling beside her, his hands shaking as he tried to rouse her. "She just collapsed," he stammered, his voice thick with panic. "We were searching the room, and she just fell." I knelt beside Sarah, but I already knew it was too late. Her skin was cold, her chest still. I couldn't even find a pulse. "We need to go," I said, my voice hoarse. Mike's eyes were wide with fear. "But what about Sarah?" "We can't do anything for her now," I said, my voice shaking. "We have to get out of here." Kelly was already backing toward the door, her eyes darting around the room like she expected that figure to appear again at any moment. Mike hesitated for a moment longer before nodding and standing up, his face pale with shock. We didn't waste any time after that. We bolted for the front door, not daring to look back. But as we reached the threshold, I heard something, a whisper, faint but unmistakable. "Mine." I glanced back one last time, and there he was, Mr. Ferris. The old man stood in the hallway, his figure almost transparent in the dim light. His eyes were dark, hollow, filled with an endless, consuming rage. The door slammed shut behind us, and we ran, not stopping until we were halfway down the street, the house shrinking behind us. My chest burned, and I could still hear that whisper in my ears, the word echoing in my mind. We never spoke about what happened that night. The police came, found Sarah's body, and wrote it off as some kind of freak accident. But I knew the truth. The house had taken her, and it would take more if anyone else was foolish enough to go looking for the old man's fortune. As for the money, I don't think it was ever real. I think it was just a lure, a way to draw people in. And Mr. Ferris, or whatever was left of him, would never let anyone leave with it. It's been years since that night, but I can still feel the weight of it, like a shadow that never quite leaves. I still dream about the house sometimes, and in my dreams, I see Sarah lying there on the floor, cold and lifeless, while Mr. Ferris watches from the shadows. And every time, I wake up with the same thought: we should have listened to Kelly. We should have left when we had the chance. Thank you for watching Serenity Valley Stories. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another scary tale. Share your thoughts in the comments below.